Dear students, welcome to this third video lesson that will cover the unit number 2 of your course, that is network concepts. In this we will be discussing various terminologies related to network. So let's start with mobile communication protocol. You all are using mobiles for communication. So there are various protocols that are being used in mobile communication. Let us discuss them. The first one is GSM, Global System for Mobile Communications. It is a standard developed by European Telecommunication Standard Institute to describe the protocols for second generation digital cellular networks used by mobile devices such as mobile phones and tablets. It was first deployed in Finland in December 1991. Okay, so you must be aware about this term GSM. Most of the mobiles that are used nowadays are based on GSM. Next term is GPRS. These full forms you must remember: General Packet Radio Services. Okay, so it is a packet-based wireless communication service that promises data rates from 56 up to 114 kbps and continuous connection to the internet for mobile phones and computers under GSM. So when you are using internet technology or when you are accessing internet in a GSM connection, that is possible due to GPRS. Next we have WLL, Wireless in Local Loop. It uses wireless links rather than copper wires to connect subscribers to the local central office. It is especially useful in rural and remote areas due to less number of users and increased cost of installation. So in a remote area, when there are less users but they have to be connected to this communication, so we use WLL, wireless in local loop. Okay, so we do not have to dig down and put the wires. We can just use wireless technologies using WLL to connect those users. Okay, so but it is only limited to a particular area. So this technology is mostly used in rural and remote areas. Now here we have a comparison between 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G and 5G. Here the G stands for generation. So 1G is an analog technology. Please note 1G is an analog technology and the phones generally had poor battery life and voice quality was large without much security and would sometimes experience dropped calls. So the main characteristic of 1G was analog. It was analog communication. Radio signals used by 1G networks are analog while 2G networks are digital. Main motive of this 2G, that is second generation, was to provide secure and reliable communication channel. It implemented the concept of CDMA and GSM and it provided data services like SMS and MMS. The goals set out for third generation mobile communication were to facilitate greater voice and data capacity. Means you can combine voice and data. Okay, while you are on a phone, you can also use internet in this third generation. It supports a wider range of application and increased data transmission at a lower cost. Now, purpose of 4G is to provide high speed, high quality, high capacity to users while improving security and lower the cost of voice and data services. You must have seen that the charges of internet has come down from last 5 to 6 years. Okay, and it also provides internet over IP. The fifth generation, It is a generation currently under development. You must have heard that 5G ka trial is going on. Okay, so this 5G is intended to improve on 4G. 5G promises significantly faster data rates, higher connection density, much lower latency, and many other improvements. But the basic difference between these generations was of speed, data speed. 1G offered 2.4 kbps, 2G offers 64 kbps, and it is based on GSM. 3G offers 144 kbps to 2 mbps, whereas 4G offers 100 mbps to 1 gbps, and it is based on LTE technology. And the maximum speed of 5G is aimed at to be as fast as 35.46 gbps. Okay, so these are the generations for mobile communication. So you can use these much speeds on different generation on your mobile phones. Now let us see some other terminologies that are in your syllabus. VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. It is a technology that allows you to make voice calls using a broadband internet connection instead of a regular analog phone. Some VoIP services may allow you to call other people using the same service, but some may allow you to call anyone who has a telephone number. Okay, when you are using voice communication over internet, then that is called VoIP. That protocol is Voice over Internet Protocol. Now let us see the protocols used for chatting. Chat is one of the most effective means of communication. Online chats on the internet include texting, sharing videos, sharing images, sharing audio files, documents, etc. It is generally textual communication between two or many people. Nowadays, applications like WhatsApp, email, Facebook, Hike, etc. they provide best features and effective ways for textual conversation. The chat protocols are, the first one is IRC, Internet Relay Chat. This protocol is used in group chatting on channels or chat rooms. Okay, you must have seen online channels. They have a separate window for online group chatting. Okay, that uses IRC. Other protocol for chat is XMPP, Extensible Messaging and Presence Protocol. It is used in WhatsApp. Okay. Now let us see some video conferencing protocols. Video conferencing is a type of internet communication. Video means visual and conferencing means communication. So video conferencing is generally a visual communication between two or many users over the internet across the globe. Video conferencing means seeing each other while talking or face-to-face communication on the internet. So the protocols used in voice conferencing are H.323 and second one is SIP, Session Initiation Protocol. Okay. Let's now discuss the term Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi full form is wireless fidelity. It is a wireless networking technology that allows devices such as computers, mobile and other equipments like printers, video cameras. You must have seen that nowadays Wi-Fi is in every device, in printers, in AC and other also, to interface with the internet. Okay, so this technology is used to connect any device to the internet. You are nowadays having smart TV, smart ACs, so everything is having connectivity to internet through Wi-Fi. It allows these devices and many more to exchange information with one another, creating a network. Next we have WiMAX. It is an acronym for Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. It is expected to deliver broadband access services to residential and enterprise customers in an economical way. WiMAX would operate similar to Wi-Fi but at higher speed over greater distance and for a greater number of users. So you can say that WiMAX is an extended version of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is limited to a particular home or a particular area, but WiMAX can be extended. Okay, so it is an extended form of Wi-Fi that can be extended to greater distances with higher speed, and the number of users can be more. WiMAX has the ability to provide services even in areas that are difficult for wired infrastructure to reach, and the ability to overcome the physical limitation of traditional wired infrastructure. Okay. Now let us come to network security. The concepts related to network security that are mentioned in your syllabus. The first one is virus. A computer virus is a malicious program that self-replicates by copying itself to another program. In other words, the computer virus spreads by itself into other executable code or documents. The purpose of creating a computer virus is to infect vulnerable systems, gain administrative control, and steal user-sensitive data. Some types of computer viruses are boot sector virus. The boot sector virus is a computer virus that infects a storage device's master boot record of hard disk. So if a virus is infecting the boot sector of a hard disk, then it is called boot sector virus. Boot sector is the main part where the information about all that storage device is stored. Then next is file virus. This common virus inserts malicious code into executable files. Okay. Third type is macro virus. Macro viruses add their code to the macros associated with documents, spreadsheet, and other files. You must have seen, if you are opening an Excel file, it will ask you that it contains some macros, you have to enable it. Okay. So macros are small codes that are inserted in a particular document or spreadsheet. Next we have worm. A computer worm is a type of malware that spreads copies of itself from computer to computer. A worm can replicate itself without any human interaction, and it does not need to attach itself to a software program in order to cause damage. The main function of worm is replication. It will replicate itself, and by replicating it will consume all of your hard disk space, and slowly you will see that your hard disk space is getting lower. Okay, so this is the characteristics of a worm. Next we have Trojan horse. It is any malware. Malware means a software, a program with malicious intention, which misleads user of its true intent. Means actual intent is hidden. The term is derived from the ancient Greek story of the deceptive Trojan horse that led to the fall of the city of Troy. If you want to know more about this Trojan horse, you can watch the movie Troy. It is a very interesting movie, and at the end you will see how those attackers used a horse to get the victory over the city. Okay, so here the malicious intention of the software is hidden. Okay, Trojans are generally spread by some form of social engineering. For example, where a user is dubbed into executing an email attachment disguised to appear not suspicious. Okay, you will feel that it is not suspicious, but it will have some malicious intention, that is called Trojan horse. Okay, आपको ये लगेगा कि दिखने में वो आपको गलत नहीं लगेगा, उसका नाम बहुत अच्छा होगा. जब आप उसको डाउनलोड करेंगे, एग्जीक्यूट करेंगे, देन इट विल mislead you, or it will perform its malicious intentions. Then we have spam. It is any kind of unwanted, unsolicited digital communication, often an email, that gets sent out in bulk. आपको देखा होगा आपके मेल में एक स्पैम फोल्डर होता है. Then in that spam folder you have lots of mails that are unwanted. Okay, and those mails are sent out in bulk. Mostly there are email messages. Spam is a huge waste of time and resources. Next we have cookies. Computer cookies are small piece of data stored on the user's computer by the web browser while browsing a website. You must have seen these notations of cookies while you are visiting a website. A notification comes that this site want to store cookies in your system. Do you want to allow or not? Okay. Cookies were designed to be a reliable mechanism for websites to remember information. What type of information? It can be like items added in your shopping cart in an online store. It will remember when you will visit again that you have 2 or 3 or more items in your shopping cart already. Or to record the user's browsing activity, that when you last log in, when you last log out. Okay. They can also be used to remember piece of information that the user previously entered into form fields such as names, addresses, password, payment card numbers. So using cookies, the web browser stores some information in your computer. Okay. So using these cookies, sometimes the hackers get to know about your network or your websites or your username, password, etc. Okay. Next we have firewall. In computing, a firewall is a network security system that monitors and controls incoming and outgoing network traffic based on predetermined security rules. A firewall typically establishes a barrier between your network and untrusted network, that is internet. So your network, you know about your network, so this is trusted network, and the internet, you do not know about that network, so that is untrusted network. Firewall provide protection against outside cyber attacks by shielding your computer or network from malicious or unnecessary network traffic. Firewalls can also prevent malicious software from accessing a computer or network via the internet. So firewalls are very essential. Next we have HTTPS. Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secured. It is an internet communication protocol that protects the integrity and confidentiality of data between the user's computer and the site. Okay. Nowadays, most of the websites are secured, that is HTTPS. Users expect a secure and private online experience when using a website. Okay. Mostly the bank websites or your email websites, those are secured. So whenever you are doing an online transaction, please make sure that you are using a secured website. Okay. HTTPS uses TLS SSL to encrypt normal HTTP requests and responses. The normal hypertext transfer protocol requests and responses are open. Anyone can read it. But this HTTPS encrypts that request and response so that anyone that is trying to check your request or response will not be able to get the actual meaning. So it makes your web experience safer and secure. A website that uses HTTPS has this HTTPS:// in the beginning of its URL instead of HTTP. So whenever you are visiting any website, kindly note the address bar and you can see that there is HTTPS. So whenever you are sharing your confidential information like your username, passwords or your debit card, credit card details, please make sure that the website is using HTTPS. You can see a lock sign in the address bar in these secured websites. Okay. Now let us come to cyber laws and India IT Act. First, let us see India IT Act. The Information Technology Act 2000, also known as ITA 2000 or the IT Act. It is an act of Indian Parliament notified on 17th October 2000. It is the primary law in India dealing with cybercrime and electronic commerce. It defines cybercrimes and prescribes penalties for them. Okay, so the Information Technology Act in India was notified on 17th October 2000. Next we have cyber law. Cyber law, also known as cybercrime law, is the legislation focused on the acceptable behavior use of technology, including computer hardware and software, the internet and networks. The cyber law helps protect users from harm by enabling the investigation and prosecution of online criminal activity. Next we have cybercrime. Cybercrime, also called computer crime, the use of computer as an instrument to further illegal ends, such as committing frauds, trafficking in child pornography and intellectual property, stealing identities, or violating privacy. An important aspect of cybercrime is its non-local character. That means the actions can occur in jurisdictions separated by vast distances. So if you are sitting here, anyone can try a fraud on you who is sitting very far from you. Okay, apart, it can be 1,000 kilometers apart. So this poses severe problems for law enforcement, since previously local or even national crimes now require international cooperation. Okay, so now a cyber criminal sitting far away from you can try a crime on you or your information, and then he will not be applicable to the your court jurisdiction, because you are sitting here and he is trying an attack from outside your territory. So now international cooperation is required to deal these cyber crimes. Now let us see some types of cybercrime. First one is phishing. Phishing is the fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information or data such as username, password and credit card details by disguising oneself as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. Suppose you are trying to do a transaction, ऑनलाइन कुछ खरीद रहे थे, एंड यू हैव, आपने मान लिया आपकी SBI में आपका अकाउंट है, आपने ऑनलाइन इंटरनेट बैंकिंग के थ्रू वहाँ से पेमेंट कर रहे हैं. सो यू विल बी डायरेक्टेड टू द वेबसाइट which will be similar to the website of SBI, but it will not be of SBI. Then you will put your username and password there, and that username and password will be gone to the criminal, and they will use that username and password to take out the money from your account. Number 2 is eavesdropping attack, also known as a sniffing or snooping attack. It is a theft of information as it is transmitted over a network by a computer, smartphone or another connected device. The attack takes advantage of unsecured network communication to access data as it is being sent or received by its user. So if you send or receive any unsecured information in a network, that information can be trapped. Next is cyber stalking. It is the use of internet or other electronic means to stalk or harass an individual, group or organization. It may include false accusations, defamation, slander and libel. Okay. Next we have cyber bullying or cyber harassment. It is a form of bullying or harassment using electronic means. Okay. Cyber bullying and cyber harassment, also known as online bullying. Okay, so these are some types of cybercrime. Next we have identity theft. If your identity is being stolen by someone else, then it is called identity theft. It is the deliberate use of someone else's identity, usually as a method to gain a financial advantage or obtain credit and other benefits in the other person's name, and perhaps to other person's disadvantage or loss. Okay, so if your identity is being used by some other person for some advantage, for him. That is called identity theft. Next is hacking. It is an act committed by an intruder by accessing your computer system without your permission. Okay, some other types of cybercrime are software piracy, denial of service attack, virus dissemination, and there are many more. Okay. Next, we have some other concepts. Number one is IPR, intellectual property rights. Intellectual property is the product of the human intellect, including creativity concepts, inventions, industrial models, trademarks, songs, literature, symbol, name, brands, etc. So, if your mind has created something new, then it is your intellectual property. Okay. So, intellectual property rights do not differ from other property rights. The other properties are physical, but this intellectual property is gained by your mind, okay, by your human intellect. It can be a new concept, it can be a new invention or a new song, okay, like this. The IPR allows their owner to completely benefit from his/her product, which was initially an idea that developed and crystallized. If you have developed an idea and it is being used by someone else, then you will be benefited by that product, okay, using these IPR. They also entitle him or her to prevent others from using, dealing, or tampering with his/her product without prior permission from him or her. He or she can in fact legally sue them and force them to stop and compensate for any damages. Okay. So copyright is also an example of IPR. Next we have hacking. Hacking refers to the activities that seek to compromise digital devices such as computers, smartphone, tablets, and even entire network. And while hacking might not always be for malicious purpose, nowadays most references to hacking and hackers characterize them as unlawful activity by cyber criminals, motivated by financial gain, protest, information gathering, and even just for the fun of the challenge. Okay, so when your information is being sought without your permission, that is called hacking. Now let us come to web service terminologies. The first one is WWW, the World Wide Web. WWW means World Wide Web, or simply known as web. It is an information system where documents and other web resources are identified by uniform resource locators, which may be interlinked by hypertext and are accessible over the internet. The English scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989. Okay, so World Wide Web means an entire group of all the information that is available on net. Okay. Next we have HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. It is the standard markup language for documents designed to be displayed in a web browser. HTML describes the structure of a web page. HTML consists of a series of elements. HTML elements tell the browser how to display the content. Okay, so using HTML we design the web pages. Next we have XML, Extensible Markup Language. It is a markup language that defines a set of rules for encoding documents in a format that is both human readable and machine readable. It is much more flexible than HTML because it allows you to create your own custom tags. In HTML you cannot create your own tags, you have to use the predefined tags, but in XML you can create your own tags depending upon your requirement. It lets you define your own tags, the order in which they occur, and how they should be processed or displayed. Okay, it is very useful nowadays, XML. Next we have domain name. A domain name is an identification string that defines a realm of administrative autonomy, authority, or control within the internet. Domain names are used in various networking contexts and for application specific naming and addressing. A domain name simply is your website name. Okay, think of a domain name as an address where internet users can access your website. So the name of your website is your domain name. Next is URL, a uniform resource locator. Okay, that is a complete web address. It is a reference to a web resource that specifies its location on a computer network and a mechanism for retrieving it. Okay, the resource can be an HTML page, a CSS document, an image, etc. So when you are storing anything, it can be a document, it can be an audio, it can be a video clip, anything. If you are storing that thing on internet, then it must have particular address or a particular location. So that location where that resource is stored is called uniform resource locator. Using that locator, you can access that content. Okay. Then we have website. A website is a collection of web pages and related content that is identified by a common domain name and published on at least one web server. Some examples of websites are wikipedia.org, google.com, amazon.com, like this. All publicly accessible websites collectively constitute the World Wide Web. So the collection of the public websites constitute the www. There are also some private websites that can only be accessed on a private network. What are they? They can be a company's internal website for its employees only. Okay. So there are two types of website, internal and external, public or private websites. So the collection of public websites become World Wide Web. Next term is web browser. So a web browser is a software application for accessing information on the World Wide Web. When a user requests a web page from a particular website, the web browser retrieves the necessary content from a web server and then displays the page on the user's device. Some example: Google Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Microsoft Edge, Safari, and many more. Next we have web servers. A web server is a server software or hardware dedicated to running this software that can satisfy client requests on the World Wide Web. Okay, a web server can in general contain one or more websites. Okay, so it is like a computer in which your website is being stored. Okay, suppose you are accessing gmail.com. Okay, so that gmail.com, all your emails are stored somewhere in internet, in a computer hardware, in a hard disk. So that location or that machine is called web server. A web server processes incoming network requests over HTTP and several other related protocols. The basic objective of the web server is to store, process and deliver web pages to the user, because everything on internet has to be stored somewhere for international access. So the place where it is stored, that is called web server. Okay, I think it is clear. Everything on the internet has to be stored somewhere, and that is stored in a web server. It can be a local web server or a remote web server. Next term is web hosting. Web hosting is a service that allows organizations and individuals to post a website or web page onto the internet. So the service for hosting a website is called web hosting. A web host or web hosting service provider is a business that provides the technologies and services needed for the website or web page to be viewed in the internet. So if you have made a website and you have a web server, then you will post your website on that web server so that it is accessible for all the users worldwide. So that process is called web hosting. Websites are hosted or stored on special computers called servers. Next is web scripting. Dynamic content can be added to web pages using scripting. Initially, the websites were static. They had some particular data to be read only. You cannot interact with that website. But if you want to interact with the user, then you have to put some dynamic content, and that can be done using scripts. A script is a set of instructions that is executed under certain condition. Let us see an example. If a user completes an online form, it is good practice to validate their entries. This is where scripting comes into the place. Web scripting uses small programs that are executed based on user interaction with a web page. Web scripts can run in one or two places. It can either run on the client side, those are called front end, and they can run on server side, those are called back end. The client refers to the web browser used to view a web page. The server refers to the computer server that hosts the website. On the web browser where you are entering the website address, that is called client side, and where your website that you are accessing, that is stored, that computer or that server is called server side. Okay, so first let us see client side scripting. In client side scripting, scripts are executed on the local computer, that means your computer, after you have loaded the web page. The script can be embedded within the web page or made available as a separate file. Okay, here the dynamic behavior is already the part of web page when you are downloading it for viewing in your browser. Some examples of client side scripting languages are VB-script, JavaScript, and PHP. You must remember these names because it can be asked in the board examination that name some client-side scripting languages. So these are VB-script. VB means Visual Basic Script. Second is JavaScript, and third is PHP. The server-side scripting languages. In server-side scripting, scripts are executed on the server before the web page is downloaded by the client. Consider the example of logging in into your bank account. You can go to the bank's home page and fill in your username and password. Then you click on the login button. With this, a request is sent to the server where the website is being hosted. The server checks your login credentials, and if they are correct, then they give you your account information. This is when the scripts run. The server then creates an HTML page to present you with your account details. Okay, so the scripts that run on the client side are called client side scripts, and those that run on server side are called server side scripts. So the example of some languages through which we can design server side scripting, those are ASP, Active Server Page, JSP, Java Server Page, and PHP, Hypertext Preprocessor. Please note, PHP is Hypertext Preprocessor. Okay, so these full forms you must remember. Okay. Next we have Web 2.0. It is the second version of Web, World Wide Web, used for social networking. It is Web 2.0 refers to the website that emphasize user-generated content, ease of use, participatory culture, and interoperability for end users. Web 2.0 describes a set of next-generation internet technologies. These protocols and tools make it easier to create online applications that behave dynamically. They are also highly social, encouraging users to manipulate and interact with the content in new ways. Some examples of Web 2.0 features include social networking sites like Facebook, blogs, wikis, YouTube, Flickr, etc. So it is called the second version of web, World Wide Web, where user interaction is more and more. So all these social networking websites where you interact with one another, those are based on Web 2.0. And at the end of this session and the end of this unit, there are some expansions of abbreviations that were discussed during these 3 video lessons covering this unit number 3. These expansions are very important for your examinations. They can be asked in your board examinations or pre-boards, and they are also very useful for your general purpose interactions with the internet. Okay, the CDMA, TDMA, UMTS, HSPA, EDGE, WCDMA, ISP, DSL, SMS, MMS, LTE, TLS, SSL, CSS, NFC. So these are some abbreviations that are used in this technical world, and you must know, being a computer science student, you must know all these expansions. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this unit. I hope that you have gone through all these concepts and you are able to understand all these concepts. Again, I am telling you that these concepts are being told to you in a nutshell. Okay, we have not gone into the depth of it because it is a very deep topic. So depending upon your requirement as per your syllabus, we have discussed the terms that are mentioned in your syllabus. Okay, so there is a special type of question, that is an application based question in your board examination, that we will discuss in a separate video lesson, and then there I will tell you what are the types of questions that are being asked from this unit number 2. Okay, so I wish you best of luck for your examinations, and I hope that you will secure good marks and you will all go through these video lessons that were specially designed for you, so that you can get all the knowledge about your syllabus of computer science in class 12th. And I hope that my efforts will benefit you and you will secure very good marks. Okay, so thank you very much.